Hi guys, I'm Laura. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a mom of two and I'm the founder of the Lavish Method, where I teach women who just want to lose weight a simple way of eating that actually works and doesn't involve giving up wine, chocolate, or anything else that makes life worth living. And today, I've decided to come on and share all about metabolism, how it can be your best friend or how it can be your worst enemy when it comes to fat loss. Okay? Amazing. Let's do this. So what exactly is metabolism? That word is thrown around all the time. You know, high metabolism, low metabolism. Oh, my metabolism slowed down as I got older and that's why I'm getting fat and, you know, X, Y, and Z. We hear metabolism, but do you know what it actually means? So metabolism it's just basically the energy required to keep your body alive and kicking, you know, and making it through this thing we call life every day. So we have something called our basal metabolic rate, and everybody's is going to be slightly different. But your basal metabolic rate is basically the energy needed if you were, you wake up in the morning and you're laying in bed and you're completely you're just still, you're laying in bed still. So the energy required to sustain that, so to have your heart beat, to pump your blood, to have your lungs working, to have your brain functioning, the energy needed for that is basically your basal metabolic rate, right? And we need to eat a certain amount, we need to take in a certain amount of energy every day just to sustain that. And then on top of that, we have, the energy that you expend every day. So the energy you expend if you're, an amazing fitness guru and you attend, 6 or 7 fitness classes a week, if you run, if you do yoga, if you're a mom and, you're really running around after super active kids, if you are, whatever you're doing, you need to take in extra energy over and above your basal metabolic rate. So I'm hoping that makes sense to you guys. It really just is a way of measuring, the baseline of the activity you're doing and how much energy you need to take into your body to fuel that activity. So how do you tell if your metabolism is high or if your metabolism is low? What you need to do is just take a really deep breath for a minute, and do it right now if you want. So take a deep breath and think about how you feel on the daily basis. Are you always cold? That's a really telling feature if you're always cold. Is your energy low? Do you wake up, not ready to take on the day, not pumped about life? Do you wake up, and hit the snooze button 3 times? Are you, dragging your butt around at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, dying for a coffee or, a hit of sugar or anything to keep you going? Have you gained weight and are having a really hard time losing it? That's really telltale as well. And finally, is your digestion, far from perfect? And, that could mean anything from having a lot of gas or bloating or stomach pains, constipation, diarrhea, any of those things where, everything is not working like the beautiful machine that it should be working like. That can be a sign that your metabolism is actually low, which is really interesting. So let's talk about why your metabolism might be low, and then maybe we can talk about a few ways that you can kick it back up. How does that sound? If you have any questions, I'm just keeping an eye on the comments over here. If you have questions about metabolism as I'm talking to you, or if you just have a question about something I'm saying, just kind of fire it off into the comments and we'll go from there. So why is your metabolism low? Number one is probably, and this is funny because people don't often think of this, but a lot of the times it's because you're not eating enough. 6 or 7 times out of 10 when somebody comes into my office and they're having a really, really hard time losing weight and, they're cold all the time and their energy is really low and there's, the classic telltale signs that their metabolism is low, we look at what they're eating and they're not overeating. It's the opposite. They are under eating. So this happens frequently in people, or women especially, who have been frequent dieters, who've been watching their weight for a really long time, who've tried all sorts of different, cleanses and fad diets and have lost weight and gained it back and lost weight. What happens is your body is really, really smart. Like, we have really adapted smart bodies, right? We have survived for a long time, the human race has, And, you know, we've survived things like famines where food is scarce and your body really has to learn how to conserve energy if it's going to make it through to the next generation and if it's going to keep going, right? So what happens when you cut your calories drastically, which most diets are eat less, exercise more, right? And basically, if you break it down, that's what all diets for the most part are getting you to do. Eat less calories, move your body more, hoping that your the calories you take in will be far below what your calories are needed, and you'll start tapping into stored fat and burning it. The problem is our bodies are way more complicated than that, and they're adapted to survive. So if you start taking in way less calories than you need, you're gonna start losing weight. That will happen. But after a little while, that weight loss is going to slow down and stop. And that's because your body, your brain is, hey Melissa, hey Megan, hey Amanda. Hi guys, love you guys. Sorry, I got distracted by looking at the comments. I shouldn't do that. So what happens if you're taking in way too few calories and your body starts to catch on? Like, this is happening every day. Okay, what's going on here? Why? Okay, something's wrong, and your body goes into survival mode, starvation mode. Like, it is a real thing. So your body downregulates your metabolism. It downregulates the energy you need for non-essential functions so that you can survive as long as possible during what your body thinks is a famine, even though it's self-induced and there's a ton of food everywhere, right? So, you know, that is something that's really important to take note of and to really understand when you're going on these diets and you're really, you know, cutting down your food intake, is that your metabolism is going to downregulate. And then this is where you get issues with things like digestion, because digestion is, it's secondary, right? Like, you don't need it for immediate survival. It's kind of a background function. So what happens is when your body thinks that there's not a ton of energy available, it does a couple different things. It gives less energy to non-essential functions like digestion. So this is where you start getting issues with, you know, extra gas and cramping and maybe heartburn and maybe some constipation. And that's because the energy is just not there for your digestive system. So it's slowing right down, right? And that's really important to note. And the other thing that happens is your body says, okay, like, we are in trouble. This is a time of famine. Like, things are not happening. Hi, Nicole. Hi. This is not good, right? And so what's going to happen is that your body is going to hold on to every single fat store that it has really tightly, because it knows that eventually the food may even get worse and worse and worse, and it's going to have less and less to survive on, and it's going to need that stored fat. So it's really important to understand that and to make sure you're eating enough food, even if you're trying to lose fat. Number 2, your thyroid hormone is low. So your thyroid is basically what we call the master of metabolism. Your thyroid basically dictates your metabolic rate, and it can be low for, you know, a lot of different reasons. I'll talk about maybe 2 main ones. One of them is nutrient deficiencies. So there's some very specific nutrients your thyroid needs in order to function at its top, like, peak potential. One of those is going to be selenium, and one of them is going to be iodine. And those 2 nutrients can be tough to get in, you know, a really package-heavy, processed food-laden diet. They're just not there. So we need to be getting those from, like, real, whole, natural foods, specifically seafood and sea vegetables. Huge for thyroid health, and obviously in most people's diet we don't eat a ton, you know, of seafood or sea vegetables. You don't see a lot of people snacking on seaweed, but you should. It's an amazing source of iodine. It is wonderful for keeping your thyroid in tip-top potential. So definitely something you should think about incorporating more into your diet. The other thing you want to do is avoid things like iodized table salt, which has too much iodine and can do the exact opposite and kick your thyroid out of ideal functioning zone. So it's really important you get your iodine from whole food sources, not from processed crap, right? Okay, so that's talking about why your thyroid could be low. The other reason your thyroid could be low, and this is prevalent in a ton of people, like so many people. So your thyroid could be low. Let's just see, why is it stopped here? I don't know if it's stopped or, hold on guys. Just want to make sure that you guys can hear me because on my computer it's acting difficult. Okay, we're good. We're good. You can hear me. Okay, so why else could your thyroid be low? Stress. So your thyroid is like BFFs, best friends forever. Like they are tight with your adrenals. And if you don't know this, maybe you do know this. This is out there a lot lately. We're talking a lot about adrenal fatigue and issues people are having with their adrenals. And that's because your adrenals are basically responsible for your stress response. So your adrenals are kind of first line defense. They're impacted greatly in times of emotional prolonged stress, which we as parents, as women are under all the time. And your thyroid is tied in intricately with your adrenals. So basically when you're stressed, especially over a long period of time, and you're experiencing adrenal fatigue, or you're getting into the phase of experiencing adrenal fatigue where you're exhausted all the time, you're gaining weight, you have brain fog, you're just not there, you're not with it, your thyroid is suffering as well, and that can lower your metabolic rate. So those are some things to really keep in mind when you're talking thyroid, is making sure you're getting in really good nutrient dense foods, especially seafood and sea vegetables, I know you can't limit stress. I get that it's impossible. What you can do is try to manage stress, right? Manage the effects in your body. One of the things you want to remember is that stress isn't an outside factor. Stress is your reaction to an outside factor. So while you can't always control the outside factor, most of the time you can control how you react to it. And it's difficult, but things like yoga, things like meditation, gratitude practices are really, really popular. So that's something you can look into if managing stress is up there on your list of things to do. So the third reason your metabolism might be low, or there's many reasons, the third I'm going to talk about tonight, is your lean muscle mass. So this is a really big one. I don't know if you guys know this, but you can hear me. Oh, good. Thanks, Powell. Thanks, Amanda. So your lean muscle mass. So if you take into account your body, you have your lean muscle mass, which is like your muscles, right? And then you have your fat. So lean muscle mass, your muscles, are what we call metabolically active, which is super cool. So what that means is that I'm sitting here, I'm talking to you guys, I'm just hanging out, I'm not really moving much, but every muscle in my body is burning calories just by existing, just by being there. They are what we call metabolically active tissue, and that means they constantly need energy just to exist, which is fantastic. Your fat cells, however, so all the fat cells sitting here on my body are sitting here like little bumps on locks. Like they're not doing anything, right? They need nothing to exist. They are like little storage lockers of future energy sources, which is great. They're there for a purpose, but they don't burn calories. So the more muscle mass you have, the more metabolically active your tissue is, and that means your metabolism, just that resting metabolism, is going to be higher for you, which means you're burning more calories throughout the day just by existing than somebody who has less muscle mass, which is really cool, right? Like think about that. That's a huge factor. So if you do a ton of cardio, for example, and you don't do strength training, that can be a problem as you get older, because as we age naturally, unless we're keeping it up with strength training, our muscle mass tends to decline, which is not good. We don't want that. We want to keep it high, and that's what's going to keep our metabolism high as we get older. The other thing you need to do is eat really good quality protein, at every meal, not just dinner. Like that old big protein at dinner time is crap. Yes, you should have protein at dinner, but you need protein at breakfast, and you need protein at lunch, and you need protein during your snacks. Because as long as you're supplying good quality protein, your body's going to have the building blocks necessary to, keep that lean muscle mass where it needs to be. So those are the three reasons right now that I can think of that your metabolism might be lower than it should be. You're not eating enough, your thyroid hormone is low, and your lean muscle mass isn't where it needs to be. So how can we fix this? How do we rev this up? There's lots of different reasons. So lots of different ways we can do that. So the first thing we can do is to avoid starvation mode. So now that you know that when you lower your calories too much, you're gonna hit starvation mode and your metabolism is gonna downregulate, we need to avoid that. One of the ways we can avoid that is by changing the amount of macronutrients that we eat, changing the percentage. So in my case and with most of my clients, when we raise fat in the diet up to a much higher level than it normally is at, that's a whole different Facebook Live. I'm not going to go there, but I will quickly say this: fat will not make you fat. Believing that fat is going to make you fat is basically like believing green vegetables will turn you green. It's so not true. We need to get over this whole fat thing, and we need to get over it quick. But I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about metabolism. So a lot of the times, instead of just drastically lowering your calories, it's changing where your calories are coming from that makes a huge difference. And one of the things you can do is really look at how many carbohydrates you're taking in, like your grains, your pastas, your breads, your things like that, versus how much fat you're taking in. And maybe what you can do is try increasing your fat and decreasing those kind of grain-based carbohydrates, which aren't as nutrient dense, and have a bigger effect on blood sugar. Now, with some clients that I work with, we do something called a full ketogenic diet, which again, it's a different topic, and I'll go into it maybe next week. But it's interesting because studies have shown that when people are eating a ketogenic diet, and what that is it's basically really, really, really increasing fat. So it's a very high fat diet, moderate protein, and really low carb. So a lot of times you're eating like less than 50 grams of carbs a day. But people have found with these ketogenic diets, because what it does is it switches your metabolism. So you go from using sugar or carbohydrates primarily for energy, and you flip it to using fat, it's a totally different metabolic pathway, and it's super interesting. But what they found in studies is that when people who are using that second metabolic pathway that uses fat as your main energy source, the starvation effect isn't there. So even when they're taking in far, far less calories, they don't go into starvation mode, and their metabolism doesn't downregulate. So that's really interesting. And it definitely tells me that using fat and becoming fat adapted is really, really important. The second is making sure you're eating foods that are very nutrient dense, like salmon, which is, crazy high in your omega-3 fats, which are important for controlling inflammation. Also a good source of iodine, selenium, dark leafy greens, which are naturally rich in thyroid supporting nutrients as well, are really important to include in your diet. And then the third thing you can do with food is to use the thermogenic effect of food. So what that means, this relates primarily to protein, just making sure there's no questions. I don't see any questions on here. So if you do have any random questions, I know I talk quickly. If you have random questions, feel free to type them in the chat and I will stop and address them. But I was going to talk about the thermogenic effect of food. So thermo means heat, genic means creating. So that word just means heat creating. And it really applies well to protein, because protein is a super, super complicated, complex molecule. And what that means is when we eat protein, our body has to work really hard to break down all those bonds and actually digest it. And when our body has to work hard at anything, it creates heat. And when we're creating heat, we're expending more calories. Our metabolism is going through the roof. And it's really, really great way to keep your metabolism high throughout the day. So I kind of mentioned this briefly when I was talking about lean muscle mass, but if you decide to eat a good source of protein first thing in the morning, again at lunch, again at dinner, and have some protein during your snacks, instead of just going here, 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 and then at dinner time spiking your thermogenic effect because you're eating all this protein, you're going to start off here. I don't know if you can see my hand. Maybe you can see my hand. But you're going to start off way up here, and your metabolism is going to stay way up here all day because your body is constantly working hard to break down that protein. So you want to include good quality protein at breakfast. And no, that's honestly not like oatmeal or low-fat Greek yogurt. I'm sorry that there's some protein there, but I'm talking eggs. Eggs are an amazing source of protein in the morning. They've got a ton of nutrients, one of the most nutrient-dense foods that you can eat. Eggs are great. If you're not an egg person, do you know what's great for dinner? Leftovers from the night before, or that's what's great for breakfast, not dinner. But dinner for breakfast is a great thing. There is no law that says we need to eat breakfast foods at breakfast time. Breakfast foods are generally nutrient poor. They do not give us good energy. They leave us hungry. They leave our blood sugar unstable. They're crap. So, having leftovers from the night before, whether it's a good piece of chicken and some green vegetables, or whatever it is a really good choice of breakfast, and that's going to get your protein content in there as well. Have some more good protein at lunch. Make sure you're having protein-rich veggies like broccoli or edamame. Have some fish, have some meat. If you're using tofu or tempeh, just make sure it's organic. Conventional tofu is really gross. Lots of chemicals, and it's just not processed well, so we stay away from that. But, any of those things are fantastic to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So 3 things we can do: become fat adapted, stop being afraid of fat, use more fat in your diet, replace some of the carbs with fat for sure. Incorporate really nutrient-dense foods that are good for your thyroid and your overall health, like salmon, dark leafy greens, colorful vegetables, all those good things that are going to help our adrenals and help our thyroid and really keep our metabolism high. And the third is going to be using the thermogenic effective food, so eating protein at every meal. So that basically is what I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I know your time is crazy valuable, and I appreciate every minute that you spend on my page or interacting with my blog or sending me messages or all of that good stuff. If there's anything you want to see me talk about, this is going to be a regular every Wednesday night thing, and I will do my best to fit in whatever requests come my way. If you love what I'm all about, and you haven't already, make sure you download my brand new starter guide. It's on my website. It's basically a starter guide for women who just want to lose weight and are freaking sick of dieting. So you can go to www.lavishnutrition.com to get that. It's free. Or I'm going to probably post a link to it in the comments so you guys can just download it from there. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I'm going to talk to you guys